All right, so we're going to start this morning with Riley Clubb of Harvust. Harvust is the American Farm Bureau Entrepreneur of the Year winner in was it 2021, Riley? I believe it was.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, very good. And our president, Jamie Johansson, was one of the judges on the panel that selected them as the Entrepreneur of the Year. And they offer a really unique and interesting cloud-based, iPhone-based service for onboarding and transmission of information to your employees. So we're going to start with Riley, and after that, he's going to hand it off to Andrew Stankiewicz with FieldClock. FieldClock, in a lot of ways, is similar to what Harvust does. They concentrate on time and attendance and productivity monitoring when you're doing things like using piece rate systems for compensation. I think we all know or have figured out by now that the state of California seems to really not like piece rate. So to the extent that we can make it as easy as possible for you to use it, because your employees do like piece rate, or at least a lot of them do, it'd be nice to give you the flexibility to give you a tool that would be able to make that a little easier for you to do. So you didn't come on this morning to hear me and to look at me. So I'm going to turn it over to Riley. And Riley and Andrew, I'm going to turn off my camera and turn off my sound. If you guys have a question, feel free to type it into the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat. And if it seems like something pops up that needs an immediate answer, I might interrupt, but we might try to save them to the end. So guys, take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brian. And thank you all for making the time this morning. My name is Riley Clubb. I'm one of the owners of Harvust, as Brian mentioned. Very excited to be here with you all. I see some familiar names and all the sea of black boxes in front of me. So to those of you who I do know, hello, good to see you. And those of you who I haven't met, I hope that we can meet soon. And I'm really excited to show you our software. So I'm going to start with just a couple of slides. I know everyone's favorite thing is slides, but I think it'll be a helpful way to just give a brief overview of what Harvust is and specifically the headaches that we are addressing. But what I'm really excited to do is jump into our software, give you guys a demo, and in less than 10 minutes, we are going to hire a brand new employee. So Harvust is HR software, but specifically for farms, but specifically, my keys aren't working. There we go. I mean, you know, the state of California, the state of Washington, they have one thing in common. Maybe they have more than one thing, but for sure they have governments who are creating lots of headaches for ag employers. And basically, our view is that is not slowing down. There are new rules and regulations, new hiring forms, also new health and safety hazards, as demonstrated pretty evidently by the pandemic. And when you combine those problems with these outdated solutions, like trying to do all this on pen and paper, trying to keep records in binders and file cabinets, you end up with costs. You know, you're spending a ton of extra time on staff, paid unproductive time, not to mention all the penalties and fines that come with this liability of keeping your employees safe and all these regulations that are brand new. So we're trying to take these burdens off of your hands. We're doing this with hiring forms that are optimized for a mobile environment, with e-signatures, with mobile safety trainings, and integrating really well with SMS or text messaging to make it really simple. And that's really important, right? I mean, our industry is unique. The workforce is very unique. We have built our software 100% for this industry. And that means we do things that are fairly unique to accommodate, especially the workforce who needs, you know, not just a written translation, but in many cases, an audio translation. And actually, we have found that on average, it's about 85% of employees who actually use their own device to do things like listen to safety trainings, complete paperwork. But of course, we work on all devices that can access the internet, and we work for all employees. So that's a very brief overview. Let me jump into the fun stuff, which is our actual software. And what I'm going to do right now is I am going to hire a new employee. So this is Casper Ranch. This is one of our demo accounts. And I'm going to show you, our 3 goals with onboarding a new employee are to be impeccably accurate. We need to be lightning fast, and we need to have dependable records. Okay, so let's add a brand new employee. I'm going to search for Riley. Just so happens I have worked here before as an admin account. And this is a nice feature here because, of course, when you're adding a new employee, you need to make sure you're not duplicating accounts. And so, you will find you can search by a whole number of different metrics here, phone number as well. But let's go ahead and pretend like I am a brand new employee. I'm going to put in my phone number and my name. Now, we're also going to give me a Spanish preferred language prediction. Now, your employees can always change the preferred language that they have, and you don't ever have to worry about the translation. We're going to do that for you. I'm going to put mine in Spanish just for fun so you guys can hear the translations later on. Okay, next step here, we're going through this onboarding process. We have a photo. So I am actually, there's a variety of ways to do this. I'm actually going to use, this is something new for us, a selfie link. So I'm going to click here. And I am going to now look at my phone and should be getting a text here in a second. We must have someone hiring a lot of people right now because the server is going a little slower than it was earlier this morning. Try sending the second one. Okay, no big deal. I'm not getting that text. It's probably stuck in a lot of traffic at the moment. But what's cool is I can now use a second option, which is I'm just going to scan this QR code. So I'm putting that QR code, my phone. Oh, there we go. I just got the text. Well, anyway, we're using the QR code now. Okay, so I'm going to take a photo. So very awkwardly, I'm going to take a selfie here on my phone. There it is. All right. So that's going to be uploading. We can continue while that uploads, and I will put myself on our main crew. All right, identification documents. Of course, we need to have identification documents for the I-9. And so once again, I'm going to pull out my camera, hold it on my phone, hold it over this QR code, and it pulls up, if you've ever scanned a check to your bank, like mobile check deposit, it's kind of like that. On my phone, I have some options here to select a driver's license because I have my driver's license with me. So I'm going to scan a driver's license real quick, just like that. And then I can actually scan another document. And interestingly, this is a new feature for us. We noticed a lot of our customers, your employees will show up with letters and envelopes or literally written pieces of paper with their address. We actually can scan those too. So I have an envelope here. Sorry, my background does annoying things sometimes, but this envelope has my address on it. So I'm going to scan that so that we have another scan of my address. Very good. And I'm going to select our FELS recommended new hire packet. So thank you, Brian. We've been working with him to make sure that we have materials in here that are appropriate and necessary for California farms. So that's all in that packet. Moving on, and we're almost done. I'm going to select our orchard orientation course. This is a couple of trainings that we want to send to new employees. I'm going to send those directly to our new employee. Finishing up here, we can support employee ID numbers, but for the purpose of time, I'm going to skip this. This is something we would configure with you kind of more individually based on what other systems you're using. But now, really cool, we have FieldClock. And FieldClock, when you're using FieldClock and you're also using Harvust, your experience is a lot better because you just have this native integration. We can literally click this button and now we are integrated with the FieldClock. You don't ever have to do the export, import, spreadsheet dance. I can also get the badge right away. So I'll click there to download badge and we'll store it here There we go. Beautiful. Looking good. That is our badge. Riley is a new employee here. Now, I think I've got about 5 more minutes in my promised 10-minute time here. So let's do some paperwork. Let's see how quickly and accurately we can do that. So we've got a lot of things, some pamphlets that sent to Riley. I actually got a text on my phone. But we're going to fill out some of these on behalf of Riley, like the I-9, the W-4, and the DE-4. So I'm going to fill out I-9 on behalf. And we've got a lot of information here we want to do, but fortunately, we also have these scanned IDs, so I can start with the driver's license. I'm noticing that the zip code came in a little 1 digit off, so I can also use my address scan as well. And very good, that cleaned that up. Now, I do want to say these scans are not 100% perfect. We're continuing to improve them, but you still need to give a human eye on what it's pulling in. So I had to change my last name there, but with that, we're like 90% of the way done with this I-9. A lot of this information is about me, the supervisor. It pulled in my driver's license information, which is great. Now I can say I need to fill out list C because we have a list B document. There's no expiration date on social security cards, and everything else looks good. Send for signing. Awesome. So W-4 is next. Notice we have some of that information pre-filling here. Maybe we appear to be missing address. I'll just click this button and boop, there goes my address. I'll put in a really clever fake social security number there. I am married and I have a son. So we'll put 2000 there and click send. Oh, right. This is required. Perfect. So Harvust is very accurate. It doesn't let you do these little human mistakes, right? So this is required. So I'm going to put in 2000. Perfect. Send that for signing. Just ignore my little password manager there. Okay, the DE-4 looks like we have some more information, but it's pulled in a lot of information from other stuff. We've got 1 withholding allowance, total number, and that should be, we're all done. So the supervisor's done at this point, except for the second part of the I-9. Now, I've gotten a bunch of links on my text messages with links, so I could do this on my phone. I could fill these out. But for the purpose of showing you guys what this looks like, I'm actually going to and we can also pretend like maybe their phone doesn't work. Maybe they don't have a phone. For whatever reason, the phone's not working. You can click down here as the supervisor, get sign in link, and we can give the employee access on this device. And so now Riley can do all the things he might do on his phone. He can now do them right here. So we'll start that, and that looks good. These are some pamphlets that we want to make sure that we have Riley's name and signature. So we're just kind of going through some of the information. Okay, and then this step, this is where we'll have Riley use his finger, or he can use an awkward mouse since I'm on my desktop computer to do my signature. And this will now load for all of our documents in that packet. We've got an I-9 with my signature there. We've got a W-4 with all the information we entered. We've got the DE-4. We've got some pamphlets that the good people in Sacramento would like you to share. And we'll complete these documents. And we're done. So now when I come back to my supervisor side and I click on refresh, we just have one last signature for the I-9. The supervisor does have to sign for section 2. And all that information is good. There's my beautiful John Tuttle is our demo grower. So that's John's signature. It's been pre-filled. He's done this many times. And that all looks good. And these I-9s always take a few extra seconds, and we're done. So that is an entire hiring packet with specific California forms completed, the I-9, the W-4, yeah, that is how accurate and fast it can be on Harvust. A lot of our customers, when they start out, they're hiring people within about 5 minutes. Actually, some of our customers now, they can get that down to 2 minutes. So that is onboarding. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew at this point, because Andrew's going to show, once you've onboarded an employee, now all the things you need to do as far as pay. And then we'll come back after that, and I'll show you some more safety training and communication features. So with that, Andrew, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Riley. I think the only thing smoother than that transition is our integration. So appreciate that. Good job on your piece. So I'm Andrew Stankiewicz, VP of Revenue for FieldClock. And for the next 15 minutes, we'll focus a little bit more on how you're tracking your labor, and specifically whether it's time or production. And as everyone in this call knows, the cost of farm labor has never been higher. And after more than 10 years in the payroll and labor tracking industry myself, it's always been clear that California has its own set of rules. And I'm learning now that agriculture takes it to a whole nother level. So let's talk about some of those everyday headaches that farmers in California are facing today. And I'm going to talk about 4 key focuses. One's going to be accurately paying your workers. Next, we're going to talk about using piece rate as it was intended. And I actually have a fun couple math examples to show. And then we'll get into our demo a little bit. I'll show you how to clock in workers and how to do piece rate. And then the third headache we're going to handle is knowing your data quickly so you can make decisions. And then ultimately, we all know that payroll is a burden. So let's get into the first pain, which is accurately paying your workers. And obviously, accurately paying your workers will save you money. But look, you've all been there, right? You're standing in a field. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. You're trying to write down who showed up, and a line of workers, they're going to pop up, and some of them are early, some are late. But yet your records are going to show that a crew of maybe 20 or more people just magically showed up exactly at 5 o'clock on the dot. And, the reality is that some showed up 15 minutes late, maybe some were 5 minutes early, but you really can't track it that great with pen and paper. And ultimately, you would never be able to really prove it in an audit. So you're always going to have to round up to protect yourself and pay more. And then it begs the question, how much labor are you paying for that never really happened? So it's critically important to have accurate clock in and clock out times. But also, if you're paying by production or specifically weight, scales are a really important tool for tracking that. So we actually have a farm that recently signed up with FieldClock, and they told us verbatim that FieldClock paid for itself in its first harvest simply because they didn't have to round anymore. So it paid for FieldClock's fees, it paid for the cost of the scales, and ultimately, his example was, hey, the way we had it set up, 12 ounces got rounded up to a pound. And that adds up over 30,000 pounds in a week. And this is a smaller operation. But ultimately, with FieldClock's ability to integrate with scales, he was able to save himself significant money because he didn't have to round anymore. So accurately paying your workers is going to save you money, but it's also going to keep you compliant. So what about those potential lawsuits for underpaid workers that arrived early? So that previous example is actually very common. And a large household grower in California had recently called FieldClock because they're getting lawsuits from their workers. And look, these workers, they show up 5 minutes before their shift starts. And when they get credit for it, they're smart, right? And they see the billboards all up and down the highway. And, unfortunately now there's lawyers just waiting outside your doors sometimes looking for these easy lawsuits. So it's really important to make sure that you have accurate time in and time out, not just to save money, but also keep you compliant. So just to wrap up the first part of accurately paying, FieldClock can pay for itself the very first harvest you use it, because it'll help you avoid overpaying people and preventing those costly lawsuits. And I'll show you this in a few minutes, but basically FieldClock is an admin site, and it's also an iPhone app like Brian mentioned earlier. So you can use it on your iPhone or your Android, any mobile device with Android and iPhone. So good to know that for clocking people in. And then the second headache I mentioned earlier is piece rate, and really using piece rate as it was intended. So in a moment, I'm going to show you guys some math. I hope you guys didn't miss math class too much from back in the day, but if you're currently paying piece rate or would like to, wouldn't it be great to know like how quickly you could identify your best pickers? And then imagine if you could pay them more while actually saving your farm money. What if you could see your fastest pickers in real time? But that way you could also inspect their quality of their work. I had a farmer tell me the other day, we have a fast picker alert, so you can kind of see maybe there's a quality control issue, or maybe they're just a really good picker and you want to, pay them more. And in this case, it was someone that, had stems in there, maybe some dirt and some rocks got in there to really, because they were moving so fast. Turns out they were taking the spurs off the trees, which could now impact next year's harvest. So there was really just a lot of small details that you're not thinking about, especially with pen and paper. But the fast pickers are great. You want to reward them. You're also probably wondering, what about the slow pickers? And what am I hitting my adverse effect wage rate or the minimum wage requirements included in all that? And if you're not doing that, how are you staying compliant? So just a lot of intricacies with piece rate that, again, just creates a lot of headaches. And then another interesting piece is, if you're waiting until the end of the day or sometimes even days until the production, but imagine if you could see it in real time. And we actually have a large grower in California. I was standing on his farm and he was showing me how they run up to almost 1,500 workers during peak season. And he was showing me how he pulls up on the app and he knows that like within an hour of a crew starting, he looks to see if anyone, didn't pick any buckets. And it turns out he's like, I usually find one or two here and there, and it adds up. I'm sending people home after an hour, and typically he'll send home 4 or 5 workers in a given day. But when you think about it, if you're paying $20+ an hour in some cases, well, okay, you pay them for an hour and you cut your losses. But if you end up paying them for 7 hours or more, and then you get into more break pay and overtime, it really starts to add up. But he's able to send them home proactively and make sure he's managing his cost. So that's a great example of using piece rate in the field and how you can really maximize it. And the last thing I'll show you or mention before the examples of the math are, just think of the last time you manually counted up pen and paper tickets. You're probably spending hours doing it or paying someone a lot of money to do it. And you're ultimately still just getting an estimate of what was produced. There could be bad handwriting, dirty or wet pieces of paper, those phantom totes that seem to come out of nowhere, and just all kinds of human error really come into play. And with 1865 being the AEWR for this year for California, it's a lot to consider. So now I want to show a fun math example. All right. So I'm going to do 2 examples of a minimum wage calculation with piecework, and then I'm going to show a break pay calculation. So these are some of the more the less thought about inefficiencies when you're using pen and paper. So here in example 1, you can see it's Monday through Friday. This is for 1 worker. This is using FieldClock with an accurate time in and time out. And this is a real farmer who said this is an example from last year when the AEWR was 1751. So this is, you can see Monday through Friday, the start date, the end date, real times, 34.5 hours. That equals 50 minutes of break pay. They produced 119 pieces for $624 and change. When you do the math, 624 divided by 34.5 comes out to $18.11 per hour. There's no need for a minimum wage adjustment. You're all set with FieldClock and you're good to go. But what he said was the previous year before FieldClock, it looked more like this. Everyone got in at 5, everyone left at this time. And as you can see, 4 of those 5 days were 8 hours. And what does that mean? Well, now you have to do an extra 10-minute break for break time. So it really starts to add up. But what in this case is happening is for minimum wage, you've got 38 hours instead of the 34.5 that was actually worked. So this 624.75 divided by 38, well, now your hourly rate is 16.44. So to make up to that 7.51 minimum wage, you have to now pay an additional $40.63 simply because your in and out times are inaccurate, not because they did more work, not because they produced more. So in this simple example, 1 employee for 1 week, you just paid an additional $40 plus all the time it took to calculate it, simply because you had pen and paper and you weren't doing accurate tracking. So that's one example of minimum wage calculations. Now let's look at break pay. So with piecework, same thing, same example. These are the clock in times and clock out times with FieldClock, 34.5 hours, 50 minutes. In this case, they picked 195 pieces and were paid over $1,000. That rate of pay is $29.67. And when you do the math, since it's only 50 minutes, times that rate of pay is $24.72 that you have to pay every time to make up for that break pay. But when he was using pen and paper, again, you see these estimated times, and now you see these 8-hour days starting to add an extra 10 minutes of that break time, which we saw earlier. So now you're taking this calculation and you're basically to make up that additional time for the break pay that you're now overpaying by 40 minutes in this example, that's another $19.79 for that one employee for that 1 week that you just overpaid. So as you can see, it's absolutely, it could be really under the radar, but when FieldClock's only charging $10 or $12 per employee per month for the entire month, think about the return on investment if someone is getting paid an extra $20 or $40 a week. Well, now you're looking at a 10, 20x investment. Now multiply that over potentially hundreds or thousands of workers during multiple weeks of harvest, and it really becomes a no-brainer. So now that we talked about accurately paying your employees and really owning how piece rate works, I want to go ahead and show you a little bit about how that works. So what you're looking at here is our control panel. And I'm going to bring over, this is actually me screen sharing my iPhone. So I have it right here. So this is our control panel. I'm not going to do a full demo, but just high level to see how easy it is to create a job right here in the app. So these are the jobs. I have some in progress, but I'm just going to click the plus button. I'm going to pick the ranch that I want to do. Let's do Jersey Ranch. We're going to do a picking job. I'll be the crew boss today. We're going to select piecework. We want to go ahead and pick buckets. We're going to pay them the $5.25 like we just had in our fun math example. And now we are all set. Sometimes if you want to stay a little extra organized, you can pick a color so that it stands out when you look at the whole list of jobs. And there we go. So this is what it looks like. And then the fun part is if you click here on the bottom, it says employees. And now it turns into camera mode. And I'm going to go scan some employee badges. And as you can see, the time is exact, 1:31 p.m. because I'm in the East Coast today. So that's what it looks like to clock in workers, and the same works when you clock them out. Now for piecework, which we just talked about, now these are the 5 workers that are clocked in, and they're simply picking buckets. So every time they pick the bucket, they hold up their badge. No more pen and paper, no more guessing, no more bad handwriting. It's all right there, and it's going to flow real time into your admin site. And another great thing that can avoid human error is, see how I just scanned my badge? If I go to scan it again, it'll actually say that you can't scan me. So FieldClock, and you can customize it. You can actually have different amounts of time. So you know that it would never be able to pick an entire bucket of fruit in less than X amount of minutes. So again, you're preventing some of those phantom totes, which is some of the easy pieces here in our product. So now you've seen clocking in, clocking out, and you've seen a little bit about how to use our piece rate. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the third headache, which is knowing your data to make real-time decisions. And I like to call it the opportunity cost of pen and paper. So when you think about it, how many days until you know how much production a certain block produced? Or what would you do differently if you knew that data was available in a matter of hours and not days? And also, it would be so great to see the labor cost by field, the production by ticketers, or honestly, if you just wanted to know, hey, I want to avoid overtime this week, who's approaching overtime, to be able to see that report in real time. And if you can leverage piece rate, wouldn't it be great to have a live leaderboard of what's happening in the field? So I want to go ahead and show that. So in our reports, we just talked about this. So let's see labor cost by field. I clicked on labor cost by field. I'm looking at today. And then I can go see in the airport field, I have this amount, and then overall. But if you want to go back to yesterday, you can see yesterday's report. In this case, it's only $1. That would be a dream, wouldn't it? And then you want to look at the past month, and then you start to see the numbers rolling in. So you want to visualize it. You have charts. You can see what the jobs were. In this case, it was pest control and pruning. You want to view it by a bar chart or go back to the table, right? So custom date ranges, very easy to find. You can break it down by acre, by unit. It's fully customizable truly to see how you want to set it up for your operation and see your field costs. And then another one that I like to show is production by employee. So this is essentially showing you, if you're doing piece rate, you can see a real-time view, and there's multiple ways to view this, but just in the reporting section, you can see who's producing what and how much you're paying that person, right? So it's really easy to see in real time versus waiting till the end of the day or the next day or even more to see really what's going on in your fields. And I also want to mention too, with our new Bluetooth scale integration, you can now see how many pounds per field per day if you wanted. So you really have so many options to go ahead and remove the headache of knowing your data in real time. And then the last thing I'll show on the reports, I always like showing this one because obviously in California, it's a big one with the non-productive time. So it would be great for, you know, any kind of compliance audits or just to make sure you're doing it the right way to track all of your breaks and non-productive time. Maybe it's a safety training with Harvust, or maybe it's a rest break or lunch break. So that's how that works for the reports. And then the fourth headache is payroll. And I want to take a quick moment just to show how easy it is to do payroll with FieldClock. So you onboard the employees and you train them with Harvust. It integrates into FieldClock. Now it's all the picking, all the tracking. We went through all that, but it really just comes down to payroll. So payroll companies, as you know, aren't really designed for ag. There's a couple of them, but details can be missed, and especially when it comes to things like piece rate. So we integrate with over 20 payroll platforms, and I'm going to show you here in a moment a list of those. But QuickBooks, Famous, and all the household names we integrate with as well. And since all your labor and wage data is getting processed as you go, it'll simply be ready for you to approve here in the payroll batch. You can go ahead and you can download the file. If you want to see an example of what it might look like, you click on the preview button. You can print this for your records. You can save it, and everything can be exported into a CSV file. And then what FieldClock will do is when you sign up with FieldClock, we'll schedule a couple hours where we'll go through and we'll customize how you want to run your farm, and then we can go ahead and we can make it go right into your payroll system as well. So the payroll integrations, one of the new upgrades to FieldClock is we've upgraded our knowledge base. So should you become a client of FieldClock, or if you currently are one of our loyal customers on this call right now, you can actually go into our knowledge base. It's support.fieldclock.com, and you can go ahead and look, and you can click on any of these to get more specifics. And obviously our lovely service staff will help you along the way as well. So that does it really for my portion of the demo. Just to conclude here, FieldClock was built by farmers for farmers. We understand the importance of accurately paying your workers. Paying piece rate has never been easier with our system. Real-time reporting, it'll give you the power to make decisions faster. And paying your workers is just a few clicks away with FieldClock. So while farm labor may have never been more complex and expensive in California, it's definitely worth it to give yourself the tools to stay ahead of the curve. So with that being said, let's take a deeper look into the Harvust and FieldClock integration. And Riley, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so I think we're almost done with the presentation side of things, and we'll get into questions. But yeah, I'm going to finish up really focusing on, you know, the how Harvust and FieldClock together, just the benefits that you have by using both, and also Harvust and Fells. And I want to show off that amazing partnership we've had. I'm going to start by mentioning something that unfortunately could trigger some headaches for everyone on this call. I'm gonna talk about card check. Card check is the big headache for this year. And I actually was looking, let me share my screen again. I was looking at the Fells webinars, previous webinars, and if any of you attended this webinar from Pat Moody, part of his best practices here in his presentation, you go to slide 12. Well, look at this. Why do employees join unions? Number one, poor communication with management. I think this is something that we all kind of intuitively understand, the value of communication, how fundamental that is. But it's, you know, it's been a challenge for our industry, not only the language barrier, but literacy barrier. But there's other things here as well, lack of appreciation, lack of support or training. So let's look at how Harvust can help with all of those things. Here is an orientation safety training. So remember our new employee, myself, and I've completed a wildfire smoke safety training and a worker protection standard video on my phone. But we also got a comment here, and this comment happens to be anonymous. Not very difficult to figure out who submitted it, but it is anonymous. It says, "Do you have a mask for me?" Okay, we can comment, we can reply to this comment, we can message this employee. And this still preserves an anonymous relationship here. We're actually now transitioning over to our communication side of Harvust. But we can have an anonymous conversation here. And, depending on obviously the seriousness of what this person's reporting, sometimes you might start by saying, "I'm very sorry to hear that. Can you please come to the office so we can get more information?" Not necessarily the response for this particular comment, but this would be the kind of thing you might respond if you're getting an anonymous comment of something kind of serious. And notice that it is doing an automatic translation for us, which is great. But yeah, these are conversations. So rather than having, these massive group chats or group texts where you're trying to have everybody's replying to everybody else, and it's extremely chaotic and everyone's sharing their personal phone number, you can do much more managed conversations that are more like manager to employee. Now, within our communication tools, we might want to just reply to everybody and say, "Look, we do have masks available." So we can start a new message, and we could send this to our main crew, for example. And we want everyone to know, like, "Hey, everyone, we have masks in the office if you need one." And this will do an automatic translation for us. We could attach like an image or a PDF if we wanted to. We can also do a GPS location, which is really neat. So this will default to like the address of your farm, but by office, maybe we want to tell them, like, "I'm talking about this building here." Maybe it's the office is this building right there. And we can do that. Perfect. There is our message. We want to send it now rather than schedule it for later. So I'll click send. And I should get this text here in just a second. If I refresh the page, there it is. So I just got this text. Now, again, what's really cool is there's a literacy barrier as well here, right? So we need to provide audio. So I actually have my phone open. I just got this text. It has an audio link. And now I can click play. And again, mine's in Spanish. So here's what that sounds like.
Hola a todos. Tenemos máscaras en la oficina si las necesitan.
There we go. So a lot of undelivered here. That's because this is a demo account with a lot of fake accounts that don't actually have real phone numbers. So, but just so you know, I mean, if you have people you're sending things to and they don't actually have a working phone number, we don't charge you for that. We only charge you for, we are successfully completing a task that you've wanted to complete. So that's a very quick overview of communication. Built into here also are heat alerts and wildfire smoke alerts, where we are tracking the temperature and the air quality index at this location every single hour, and using this communication tool to notify your employees of those hazards per the requirements of both California and Washington, and now Oregon as well. What's really cool with FieldClock actually is in the past, we were just sending these to all active employees on your roster. Now we're able to use the FieldClock data that is like who is actually clocked in and on the job. We're now filtering who we send it to based on that. So you're not sending these to people who shouldn't be getting them. So that's a really neat thing, thanks to the FieldClock integration. One last thing I want to do, I'm going to make myself a manager, because I want to show you how we can do safety training attendance using our FieldClock Harvust badge. So I'm going to make Riley a manager. Now I'm going to go over here to safety. And let's say we want to do a new safety meeting. We'll do a safety meeting right now. We're going to do this one in person. And let's choose a FELS topic. We want to do a FELS safety preventing heat illness. That seems pretty appropriate for this time of the year. And what this is going to do, because it's in person, we can now take attendance. But first, what I want to do is I'm going to send attendance link to supervisors. So I'm going to send this to Riley. So Riley, we just first day on the job, and he's already a supervisor taking attendance on his phone. That's super cool. Okay, I just got a link that has an sorry, I guess I got a text with a link that again opens up my camera on my phone, and what it's looking for is a badge. So if I pull up, would you look at that, Jose Robles? He looks a lot like my business partner, James, and I've just scanned his badge using that QR code. So now when we go back to this safety training and I refresh, we should see that Jose has been marked as complete. He has, in fact. So another really, really cool benefit of using both Harvust and FieldClock, a really easy way to take attendance. And I'll wrap this up. There's so much here to show you guys. I'm really trying to show you just the things that are really the most important. One last thing here, we do have automated safety meeting programs. And I want to show you this because Brian and FELS have been really helpful in creating a whole automated safety meeting program. And so what this means is if you subscribe, say your main crew to this program, everybody on your main crew will now be receiving these topics on these months. And so just another great way to ensure that you guys are staying up to date with the support and the training that your employees are looking for. That's also mandated and required. And yeah, I guess just to overall to finish, you know, the safety and the communication side of things, this is where you're really going to find a lot of positive relationship building, not just compliance, but relationship building with your employees. And again, I think in a world where we unfortunately have the hard check and the potential threat of unionization, continued unionization, I think this is just a nice way to continue to build that relationship with your employees and just make sure that their voices are heard and that you are hearing them, right? It's not just a one-way thing. It's not that they feel like they hear you. They have the opportunity to share information and you're getting important information from them as well. Okay, bit of a whirlwind, but that is, I think, all we have as far as presentation goes. Brian, if you're still there, I think we can turn it back over to you for questions. And
I'm still here. I wouldn't go anywhere and leave you guys stranded like that. Thank you guys for that great presentation. Can you guys see the chat?
Yes.
I think you can. Eric Sanguinetti has a really interesting question. And I think that probably what typically happens is that if one person asks a question, about 10 or 11 other people have the same question or similar one. Do you guys have a look at that and maybe see how what he's looking for would fit into what we can do with FELS and with FieldClock and Harvust?
Yeah, I can answer Eric's question. So, Eric, the answer is yes. The manager will check everyone in and assign a location and job, and exactly like we showed in the demo. So that data will then be downloaded directly into QuickBooks. So what we would do is we have a direct integration with QuickBooks Desktop. So that's an easy one. And then if there's some payroll providers, we just would also provide a CSV file that we can customize and load it right into your payroll software. But for this case, absolutely directly in the QuickBooks for you. And yes, you don't need time clocks in the field. It's done through the manager. So the manager would have an iPhone, like what I showed in my demo. So what a lot of our clients do is they buy a couple iPhones and they provide them to their managers to avoid, I know there were some questions about personal use, but really the workers just have the badges, and you could buy a badge printer. What some clients do to save money is they just print out on paper and they stick it in. They go on Amazon and get 1,000 little clear plastic sleeves. So it's pennies on the dollar if you want to, save some money. But yes, all they're going to do is have their badge. and then the crew boss would scan it with typically a company iPhone or Android. And the iPad question. So it's a kiosk app where it looks like a time clock on the wall, and they basically clock in, clock out with the PIN number, and it'll take a picture of them as well. And I'd be happy to give you a more full-scale demo of that after the call. But for the sake of time, yeah, it basically just looks like a punch button, clock in, clock out. You can clock into whatever job or task is being done. And you can also clock out from one task into another task while there.
All right. Anybody else have any questions that they'd like to put in the chat at this point?
Brian, you got one more from Sarah, but I think it's maybe the same question as above, where you put in a resource there for people about personal cell phone use.
Yes, Sarah, that is the same question. To the extent, I think probably to some degree, a lot of employee cell phones wind up getting used for some conceivable business purpose. And in that case, thanks to a Superior Court judge in Monterey County, we were given a mandate that we have to reimburse employees, of course, most for use of their cell phones. That worked pretty well back in the day when the cell phone company would issue you an invoice for calls and information usage of data. But of course, nobody does that anymore. They all use unlimited plans for voice and data. The judge seems to expect us to decide on a percentage that's reasonable and fair of the cost of their monthly plan. A lot of employers that I work with are opting for something in the neighborhood of $10 to $50, depending on how much an employee. So for a supervisor, you'd probably pay them a little more against the cost of their cell phone contract. For a rank and file employee, probably not so much, because they're not going to use it as much. And that's been the best solution we've been able to come up with, because the Department of Industrial Relations and the courts haven't given us any meaningful guidance about what exactly they're expecting there. So for the time being, that's the best we can do with that. And given the ubiquity of cell phones and smartphones, I'm not sure we want to ask the labor commissioner that question, because I'm afraid of the answer we might get. So for now, let's go with the information we've been able to gather and go ahead from there. But this is not a tools issue, like they have to, if you're not issuing them tools, that you have to pay them twice the minimum wage. And
just a quick comment.
Yeah,
can I comment on that real quickly?
Yeah.
So, we do encourage our customers to rely on the devices that are in their employees' pockets as much as possible, because that is where you find a lot of the productivity benefit to kind of spreading some of the burden around, the burden of, just completing paperwork and being able to send trainings, which, by the way, employees love getting these trainings directly to their phone in a translatable audio format. Like, they love that. For if you are concerned with kind of personal use, we actually can give you a report on how much data exactly is being consumed. It's very, very light, with the exception of videos. So if you have videos you're sharing, definitely best practice is make sure there's at least a Wi-Fi access point somewhere on the farm. And my understanding, Brian, you can comment if you think differently, but my understanding is when that is available, you're sort of, it's hard to sort of argue that you're requiring them to use their own data for that purpose. But that we find that those things together are definitely helpful when trying to deal with this whole personal use question.
All right, we have another question in the chat here. Sorry, I need to get back to the right window. Here it is. Is the data in FieldClock and Harvust stored in SQL servers or similar and available to us to access directly to write our own reports and queries?
Really cool question. Ours is, I don't believe it's a SQL server, but it's similar. And Sue, we like to work with our customers to make the whole integration work for their system. So I guess the question is, the answer is yes, but we need to obviously sit down with you and your team and look at what systems, what are you trying to do? And we'll definitely come up with a a custom integration plan to make that work for you.
Yeah, and on the FieldClock side, Sue, an awesome question. FieldClock does have documented public API endpoints, and you can use those for integration with external reporting and BI tools like Power BI or Tableau, something like that. So yes.
Okay. I should probably at this point, we need to start to wrap this up a little bit. We are getting up against our hour. So we don't want to go over that if we can perhaps avoid it. Probably should say at this point, I'm going to share my screen real quick and show you a page on the FELS website that has information about how you can learn more about FieldClock. It's right on the front. Well, I'll show you first of all the front page of the FELS website. So you can go to fels.net. No. Okay. I can't get it to work right now, and that's okay. On the front page at fels.net, you can on the front page at fels.net, you can find an article about FELS plus Harvust plus FieldClock and the deal that we put together to allow you to access those and the handshake that they offer and the integration of data and other things like that I think would be very useful to you. We're working on a landing page that kind of draws all of this together, how you sign up for both, how you contact Riley, how you contact Andrew, how you integrate it with what you're already doing. It's just not ready yet. So we're going to email that as soon as it is ready to everybody who's on this webinar today. So to wrap that up, I'd just like to say, if you missed the webinar on card check that we did with Pat Moody of Barsamian & Moody last week, it's available at fels.net/webinars under a section of that page called ICYMI, or in case you missed it. The information about this webinar will also be posted at the same location on the FELS website. Probably not, because the holiday, not going to be able to get to it until Tuesday. And one other thing I should mention is on June 6th, we're doing our next webinar with Jen Shaw of the Shaw Law Group about I-9s, some recent changes in how and whether you can continue to do remote inspection of I-9s and documents, and sort of a refresher on all of the compliance issues related to I-9s, how you file them, how you fill them out, how you file them, how long you have to keep them, all that stuff like that. So thank you all for being with us. I hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend. Eat lots and lots of hot dogs and enjoy the sunshine and the warmth in the first weekend of of summer.
Brian,
thank you. Yes.
Brian, can I just add one last thing? So,
sure.
Reaching out to Andrew or I, you can go to harvust.com or you can go to fieldclock.com and reach us there. And we also are, for FELS subscribers, we are taking $500 a piece off of our setup fees to get started. And for anyone who does that by the end of this month, I realize that's a small window, but we're going to take another $1,000 off your setup fees. So I just wanted to slide that in there at the end. If anyone is really seriously considering this, you get a lot of benefit by reaching out to us, hopefully today, and we can start talking and get you all set up very quickly.
Great job, Riley. Thank you for doing that. Andrew, did you have a last word that you wanted to get in?
Nope. I really appreciate everyone's time, and feel free to reach out, Andrew at fieldclock.com, with any special questions.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for being with us today.
Thank you.